In this video I'm going to show you everything you need to know when making the choice between the Fender American Professional Series and the Fender Player Series jazz basses. Hey guys, I'm Tyler and you're watching the TJS Bass channel. This is the All You Need to Know Bass show, and in this video I'm going to show you everything you need to know about the Fender American Professional Series jazz bass and the Fender Player Series jazz bass. This is a video in collaboration with Guitar Centre in Langley here in the UK, so if you are nearby, drop by and say hello. And if you are interested in these basses, they're both available for sale on their website, so I will leave a link to them in the description. And you can check them out online. In this video I'm going to give you a run through on the specs of both of these basses, then I'm going to give you a tone demo of each of them, and then I'm going to put them head to head, back to back, so you can hear what they sound like right next to each other and make a decision about which one sounds best to you. In many ways I think this might be the ultimate comparison of these new Fender ranges, because this is also one of the biggest basses that Fender probably sells. The Player Series replaced what used to be the Mexican Standard Series, and the American Professional Series replaced what used to be the American Standard. But in many ways these are the benchmark Fenders, the standard model, and they just tell you the direction that the company's going and what they think a modern player needs to do a really good job on a gig. So with that in mind, let's get into the specs of these two basses. I'm going to do them right next to each other so you can see the differences right for yourself. So as I say, these are fairly similar basses, and I'm going to run you through the specs. There are places where they're pretty much the same, but with slight tweaks to each of the designs. So on the Player Series, we'll start at the headstock. The tuners are traditional Fender Clover tuners. They don't have any fluting or anything, they're just the standard open gear tuners. Whereas on the Professional, we have these snazzy F logo embossed tuners, as well as their fluted shafts, so that will help with the string wrapping as well a little bit. Moving down, we have the nuts. The nut on the Player Series is a synthetic nut, and the nut on the Professional Series is a bone nut. Another point should be that the truss rod access for the Player Series is at the top of the neck, whereas the truss rod access is down here at the bottom of the neck on the Professional bass. The fingerboards are both made of different material, obviously, but I feel like they're more similar than they are different nowadays. On the Player Series you're getting a Pal Ferro board which replaces rosewood, and Pal Ferro is a little bit brighter than rosewood, a little bit more dense, kind of a little bit of halfway between rosewood and maple. And then obviously on the Professional you have the maple fingerboard, but you can also get the rosewood fingerboard on the Professional. Both necks have slightly different frets. The frets on the Player Series are medium jumbo, and you can feel that they're just slightly wider, whereas the frets on the Professional are tall, narrow frets, and both basses have 20 frets, which is the traditional standard for a Fender. Moving further down the body, obviously there's two different colours. This Professional is in Sonic Grey, which I think is quite cool, and then this Player Series is in your classic white. Both of these bodies are very much the same size. And then moving on to the pickups, on the Professional Series you have the V-Mod pickups, and on the Player Series you have Amnico 5 pickups, which are specific to the Player Series, so that's a slight difference between the two in terms of their tone output. On the Player Series you have the traditional Fender bridge, classic 4-saddle bridge, which is a thin piece of metal pretty much, a standard bridge for a Fender. And then on the Professional Series you have a slightly beefier bridge, a slightly higher mass bridge, with a thicker piece of metal across the bottom. And yeah, it's just a higher mass, thicker bridge overall, which should in theory help with the sustain and the transfer of string to bridge. Both of these basses have the same standard jazz bass tone, volume arrangement, and input jack on the front. There are one or two differences on the rear of the instruments. On the Professional Series you have the Fender stamped plate with the Corona California logo on it, whereas the Player Series, being built in Mexico, just has the classic Fender F plate. You'll also notice that on the Professional Series there's the option of string through the body stringing, so you've got these 4 holes at the bottom of the bass for the strings to be sent through there and across the bridge, whereas the Player Series just has through the bridge at the front, which is a traditional way of stringing. One other thing to note is that on the Player Series jazz bass you have this rosewood strip in the back of the neck, which is unusual really for a bass that doesn't have a maple board, which is where the truss rod has been inserted. And on the professional series you don't have the strip, but you also have the inclusion of graphite rods in the neck. So the graphite rods are either side of the truss rod, and they will help with tuning stability when it changes temperatures drastically, and just keeping the bass neck nice and solid. As you can see, these basses are really close in terms of their specs. There are just slight differences between the two. Next I want to talk about the neck profile and give you guys an idea of how they sound. The neck profiles on each are slightly different, but they're both a C shape. The Player series has the modern C shape, whilst the professional series has a slim modern C shape, and I'll give you an idea of how those two feel in the hands now. The Player series, the modern C shape is a little bit deeper, but not particularly deep at all. Very easy to get around, good feel. It's a really solid neck. It doesn't really particularly thicken as you come up the neck, so it kind of retains the same profile. It flattens out a little bit on the back of the neck, but down here at the nuts, a little bit slimmer and deeper, and then there's kind of a tiny bit of a slimming out as it comes up here. But yeah, really usable, manageable neck. Moving to the professional series, it's pretty much as Fender describes. It's a really similar profile to the Player series, but just a little bit slimmer. Not quite so much depth across the neck, and it slims up a little bit more as you come up here towards the 12th fret than on the Player series. Again, a very easy neck, maybe a little bit more manageable if you have particularly small hands or whatever than the Player series, but not much in it for me. Both good feeling necks. One thing I would like to talk about on both these basses is the setup out of the box. I would say that the Player series is set up a little bit high out of the box, and then looking at the build quality, I think that the bass is really well finished. It's a really nice quality. The finish is really good. There's no damage or cracking or anything like that around the neck pocket. But I would say that the fret ends are actually not a problem at all. There's no sharp edges or anything like that. But the edge of the fingerboard and the fret edge, you can just tell they haven't spent as long, haven't had the luxury of as much time to really taper them off. But then shifting to the professional series, you can see where that little gulf in the price comes in, where the fret edges, the fretboard edges are really well rounded, and then again the fret edges really tuck in nicely. So really there's no chance of any kind of sharp edges on these frets. I'd also say that the setup is a little bit lower on the professional series, which just gives it a better feel overall when you're first picking up the bass. I do generally quite like my setups quite high. I like a slightly higher action, but between the two, picking them up, although the Player series has a higher action, I feel like this is set up better overall. My last consideration would be the weight. Between the two, the Player series is actually a little bit lighter. The professional series feels slightly heavier, but obviously that varies, and every piece of wood is a little bit different. They're constructed from pretty much the same woods. They both have maple necks, and they both have alder bodies. They both have their bodies finished with a poly finish, a gloss finish. The only difference is the material used for the fretboards. So now I've run you through the specs, let's get into the tones. I'm just going to run you through a few of the variations in tone, just from the two pickups and using the tone knob, and then after that I'm going to put them head to head, and you can let me know what you think about the best sound between these two. So the sound you'll hear for these basses is straight through the Fender Rumble 800 head, out of the DI and into Logic Pro. So here's the sound with both of the pickups wide open and the tone all the way up as well. This is the front pickup with the tone all the way up. Then the rear pickup with the tone all the way up. This is the both pickups with tone rolled all the way off. This is the front pickup with the tone all the way off. This is the rear pickup with the tone all the way off. So there's some really solid sounds there available from the Player series. I think absolutely classic jazz bass really. Let's take a look at the Professional. So this is both pickups with the tone up on full. This is the front pickup with the tone up on full. Rear pickup with the tone on full. This is both pickups with the tone rolled off. This is the front pickup with the tone rolled off. And this is the rear pickup with the tone rolled off. What I'm hearing from those two demos is that with the Player series it's a slightly smoother and a slightly maybe more vintage type sound, whereas with the Professional series you're getting a slightly more modern sound, a little bit more growl, a little bit more high mid potentially on the Professional series, and a little bit more low mid with the Player series. Now of course there is the fingerboard to contend with. There is a difference that will come from that, but overall I'd say that the Professional series feels a little bit more modern, and the Player series is a slight bit more vintage. Let me know what your thoughts are on these two tones in the comments below. I'd really like to know which one you think is the more modern sounding or the more vintage sounding, or just really what you're hearing. Put that in the comments below now. Also don't forget, if you're liking this video so far, hit that like button, and if you want to see more videos like this, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell to make sure you don't miss any of my videos. This last section I'm going to play some slap style, some finger style and some pick style, and give you an idea of how these basses sound head to head in a mix with some drums, and let you make your choice between these two basses. So that was the tone demo section of the video. Let me know which you thought sounded better in the comments below. I'm going to round up this comparison video and give you my thoughts on the two basses. I think what's undoubted in both the tone demo and checking out the specs is that these basses are really similar, and they are probably more similar than they are dissimilar. Of course, it's one standard jazz bass versus another standard jazz bass really. From a tonal perspective, I believe that particularly in that second tone demo, once I started rolling off the tone of the Professional, there's a lot more deep low end, whereas on the Player series over here, the low end was kind of more in the mid-range, low mids, upper bass kind of level. And I thought that was really interesting. I felt like the Professional series had a little bit more character available. You could change it between different characters and make it a more versatile bass. It could be really bright and modern, or it could be slightly more traditional sounding, darker sounding and really quite deep. Whereas I feel like the Player series generally is a little bit more towards that vintage side. It might be the Underco pickups, but yeah, it just keeps it slightly more towards that side of the spectrum within terms of the sound. When it comes to build quality, I think they're both really great, but there is obviously a difference. There is actually some value you're getting for the price of the Professional series, that extra little bump. This Player series is a great solid bass, and for $5.99 it's better than I remember the American standards being. I believe there's a bit more quality coming from one of these basses than those old standards that are around the £400 mark. And I think it's a really solid bass. You could tour with it happily. I wouldn't take it to really extreme humidity and then extreme cold without the graphite rods. I think that's where the Professional series really comes into its own. But this is a really solid bass. If you're a weekend player or just want a jazz bass to add to your armoury, you're not going to be disappointed with this in the slightest, I don't think. With the Professional you are getting a little bit more value. I feel like it's definitely a more solid instrument. I really like the range of tones that I was getting in the tone demo. I think in terms of the neck profile I prefer the Player series actually, but the setup on this bass was significantly better than the Player series, and out of the box it's going to feel better for you if you buy this in a shop and you haven't had it set up professionally. It's going to feel really good. Again, you could get close with the Player series, but I think that's really the difference between these two basses. The American is better set up, it's better, slightly better. There's just a better feel to the instrument. The woods feel a little bit like they've been treated a little better. Maybe they're a slightly higher quality of wood, which you'd expect. You're paying more money for this bass, so it should be better. And then those small things like the narrow frets and the fret edges and the rounding of the fingerboard make it feel a lot more comfortable. It's a much more comfortable experience. Overall, if I had to choose between these two basses, I would definitely say that the American Professional series is the better bass. It's slightly better finished. The little incremental updates are really sweet, and I really enjoy them. But then if you look at the price difference, it's £700 more for the American over the Player series, and it really comes down to your use. If you're a professional player, no doubt, get one of these. If you're in the market for a jazz bass and you want a really standard jazz bass that will fit into a ton of settings, this will do it. But if you are a weekend warrior or you play a little less regularly or semi-pro or something, the Player series is really, really good for the money. I don't even think you need to use the words for the money. It's a really good bass. It sounds great. It just has those few little things that aren't quite as nice, and doesn't have those little tiny little things that I've said about already in this video that add to the polish of the instrument. If you gave them to me for free, obviously I'm going to take the Professional series, but if you are asking me to pay the money, I would definitely consider the Player, depending on how much use you're going to get out of that bass, because it's a really good value jazz bass. And well worth checking out. So that's my comparison of these basses and my opinion. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Would you save your money and take the £599 Player series bass, or would you spend that little bit more for the Professional series? As ever, let me know which one you thought sounded better, which one you would take in the comments below. If you like this video, hit the like button, and if you like this kind of video, consider hitting subscribe and that notification bell. Don't forget you can buy both of these basses at the Guitar Centre Langley here in the UK. I will leave links to them in the description, and you can go and check them out in store for yourself if you're in the area. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you around soon.